This is episode 89 of That Shakespeare Life. This episode is brought to you in part by Audio Shakespeare Pronunciation App, the only audio Shakespeare pronunciation app which is designed to remove fears about how to speak Shakespeare's language so that his plays are accessible to everyone. Find out more about this app in today's show notes and stay tuned after the episode for how you can learn more.
Hi, I'm Emma Smith. I'm a professor of Shakespeare Studies at the University of Oxford. A really great method for studying the life of William Shakespeare includes listening to this. It's That Shakespeare Life with my friend Cassidy Cash.
James was the self-appointed King of Peace, or the Rex Pacificus. This was the big outline of his reign. It was marked by the peace treaty with Spain. And part of this peace treaty was the clause of a royal marriage.
Welcome to That Shakespeare Life with Cassidy Cash. Cassidy believes that if you desire to successfully learn or perform Shakespeare's plays, then understanding the real life and history of William Shakespeare himself is a must. That Shakespeare Life is the podcast that helps you go beyond the curtain of some of Shakespeare's most iconic works and explore the world of early modern England as Shakespeare would have lived it, learning from the writers, historians, and performers who know it best. And now, here's Cassidy.
William Shakespeare lived in a time when politics and religion ruled the strategy of kings and queens throughout Europe. But perhaps the most notable method of securing peace for the self-styled King of Peace was through marriage, bringing his own form of stability back to England through his marriage and children on the heels of the infamously virgin queen and heirless monarch Elizabeth I. James had marriage as a focal point of both his life and his political strategy. One of the defining moments of his reign was his and Queen Anne's focus on procuring marriage to his son Charles, and seeking out specifically a Spanish match for that son. Today, our guest, Mira Kafantaris, is here to share with us the history of James's Spanish match, what the cultural reception of that marriage for peace approach was in the common realm of England during and just after Shakespeare's lifetime, and whether we can see echoes of this cultural reality show up in the plays of the Bard, which are so well known for reflecting what were major current events of his lifetime. Mira Kafantaris is a senior lecturer at Ohio State University, where she is currently completing a book manuscript titled Royal Marriage, Foreign Queens and Constructions of Race in the Early Modern Period, which argues that representations of non-English, non-white queens alongside theories of kinship and intermarriage drive early modern constructs of race. She is the recipient of the Presidential Fellowship from the Ohio State University and several grants from the Folger Shakespeare Library and the Shakespeare Association of America. Hello, Mira. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Cassidy. I'm so delighted to be here.
During Shakespeare's lifetime, when monarchs between different nations often used marriage to end wars and bring about peace, why is it that there was also a superstition about marriages between different cultures?
Yeah, that's a great question, Cassidy. So with my work, I start with the premise that intimacy shapes notions of nationhood, and that the occasion of a royal marriage is one where the stories a nation tells itself about identity and belonging and loyalty get revised to accommodate the royal stranger. So there's definitely an anxiety about intermarriage at the highest public level. And the question that often gets asked in the text that I study is, will nascent Englishness absorb foreignness, or will it be diluted by this mixture?
In her paper, Mira suggests that plays such as Shakespeare's Henry VIII and Fletcher's The Island Princess indicate that culturally, 16th century audience members felt royal marriages and the unity they brought to nations were largely an illusion. Mira, does that mean you feel people like Shakespeare held no confidence in the peace brought about by royal marriages?
It's really a complex topic because to a large portion of the population, Cassidy, who considered England an elect nation or a chosen people, royal marriage with non-Protestants really derailed this apocalyptic project, which hinged on getting rid of diseased bodies. meaning Catholics, non-white, Muslims, people from North Africa. So in preparation for the second coming of Christ. So these are certainly religious zealots, or what historians call hot Protestant. They did not view these royal unions as foreboding peace. Actually, they're derailing the project that they are working towards. Though Shakespeare is an opportunist. So in my essay on Henry VIII, I argue that at the end of the day, to Shakespeare, it does not matter if the royal consort is a foreigner or a native, as long as wink, wink, hint, hint, England has a strong king at the helm.
One intriguing marriage in particular was that of Princess Elizabeth, the daughter of King James I, who married Frederick V, the Prince of Bohemia. Was the reception of this engagement at home in England popular or viewed with apprehension?
Oh, they absolutely loved this union. They called it godly. Why? Because Frederick V was a known Calvinist who followed that biblical model of the chosen people I mentioned earlier. And yes, literally, for some Protestants, it was a match made in heaven.
Even though he was from Bohemia?
Yeah, because at this juncture, Protestantism or religious identity kind of overcame any issues of nationality. So Protestantism came first and everything else comes later.
During the last few years of Shakespeare's life, from 1612 to 1614, James I was consistently trying to marry off his children to foreign royalty, with Queen Anne taking an active role in what is called, quote, the Spanish matches for their son Charles. Mira, was England wary of a match between the royalty of England and Spain in the aftermath of Henry VIII's marriage to Catherine of Aragon? And did the plays of Shakespeare, specifically this play about Henry VIII, influence the popular opinion concerning Spain at this time?
Well, what historians tell us, Cassidy, is that even before his accession to the English throne, James I, who, as you know, was a shrewd strategist, he was working his back channels with Spain, France, and Savoy to negotiate a Catholic match for the Prince of Wales, which was Prince Henry at first, before his death in 1611. So in the play, Henry VIII, we really have a clear tension between true Englishness and everything foreign. The play, for instance, begins with an extremely charged homoerotic meeting between Henry VIII and Charles of France. Anne Boleyn is very much marked other, having lived in France for most of her life. There's a lot of talk about the French invasion at court. Again, a very raced language about disease and conduct that pre-modern critical race theories read as emerging racial taxonomies of difference. But Catherine of Aragon is doing something totally different in the play. She is presented as an exemplary figure. She is both Spanish and English, Protestant and Catholic. So my argument here is that this positive portrayal points to the inevitability of intermarriage, and that people fretting about the king's marriage plans for his children are extremists that are muddying the waters of the king's age of pacifism.
After Princess Elizabeth, and let's be clear here that we're talking about the daughter of James I of England, who married the Prince of, and then later King of Bohemia, when we're talking about Princess Elizabeth, ended up in some trouble. She appealed to her father, James I of England, for support. I know that in 1621, James I called his first parliament in 7 years to try and raise support for his son-in-law, her husband, but that it would ultimately be through marriage that James sought to bring about the positive resolution he sought for his daughter. Mira, why was James I so fixated on Spain, and why was a marriage specifically the preferred route to peace for Bohemia?
James was the self-appointed king of peace, or the Rex Pacificus. This was the big outline of his reign. And actually, at the beginning of his reign, it was marked by the peace treaty with Spain. And part of this peace treaty was the clause of a royal marriage with Spain, as well as tolerance for English Catholics. This is where religion and politics and even financial aspirations overlap. By this royal marriage, James would also have access to all Spanish outposts in the New World. So really, peace for him was both a political strategy and a religious conviction.
There are several plays written during this time period by Thomas Middleton and Thomas Dekker, which were set in Spain, and they seem to comment on the marriage arrangements of James I being called, quote, Match Me in London by Dekker, for example. Mira, why was the commentary on the marriages with Spain for James's children popular enough with the common theater audiences to be a source of a story on the public stage?
Even though the royal marriage was part of the king's prerogative, it was certainly on people's minds. And one of the most famous examples is, of course, Middleton, a game of chess in 1624, which was a direct commentary on the negotiations for a Spanish match for Charles in the 1620s. But if we also survey the sermons of the period, Cassidy, we find that this matter was very, very much on people's mind.
The only Shakespeare play I'm aware of which is set in Spain is Love's Labour's Lost, and it's worth noting that most of what occurred between James I, his children, and the Spanish matches was after Shakespeare died. So as a country, what was England's collective mindset about relationships with Spain and France? Today, for example, we think of things like Henry V's marriage to a French princess as a positive force in England, certainly a popular love story much beloved today. But for William Shakespeare, when it was originally staged, would there have been suspicion from the audience about marriage of someone like Henry V to a princess of France?
The marriage of Henry V to Catherine of Valois actually happened as a result of a military victory, the famous Battle of Agincourt. That's one way Fletcher in The Island Princess, play that was staged in 1621, sees the Spanish match as viable. Military force comes first to level the playing field, and then royal marriage ensues.
I've seen the ideology of a separation between true English and a foreign-born national show up in the dialogue of modern British TV shows that I watch today. As an example, on the older British TV show Miss Marple, there was an advertisement for a House staff member that stated specifically they wanted someone to be, quote, native English, preferring not to have anyone foreign work in the English household. I noted this occurrence as something which might be steeped in history, because not only was it a distinct statement, but the characters responded with a normative acceptance to such a request. Everyone in the scene thought that this was an ordinary statement to make, surprising as it was to me. I could tell the opinion was not a universally held mindset, but that suspicion concerning foreigners holding positions in which you might need to trust them was widespread enough to be considered normal. Is this suspicion of foreigners a holdover from the experience England had gone through, and would Shakespeare have held this suspicion?
To answer your question about Shakespeare, yes, absolutely. And all we need to do is to look at his treatment of Othello and Shylock, and we get the answer there. In terms of suspicion of foreigners, what we can do is look at the term stranger, which denoted the meaning of foreigner that is still common today. And the word stranger denoted somebody from a different geographical area, as well as aversion. So in the name itself, we have all the meaning, all the signifiers of suspicion that came from somebody who is other, who looked other, talked other, dressed other, behaved other.
Aside from Shylock and Othello, or perhaps specifically Shylock and Othello, can you give us some examples from Shakespeare's plays where this suspicion of foreigners shows up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For example, Cleopatra and Antony and Cleopatra is this very, very hypersexualized, orientalized woman who is threatening an ideal, a Roman ideal of masculinity that needs to be repudiated. And Titus Andronicus, camera is a dangerous woman who, upon her incorporation into Roman society, deals with power in a very, very strange way. I see this pattern repeating in several of the plays. Absolutely.
One of the most famous places that the theme of marriage shows up in the life of William Shakespeare that we would be remiss to not mention is the differences between having worked under Queen Elizabeth, who was famously a virgin queen and staunchly opposed to marriage, versus James I, who comes in and is not only married, but has children when he takes the throne in 1603. And I wonder, can we see a change in Shakespeare's portrayal of marriage be different under Elizabethan theater versus Jacobean theater?
Well, Cassidy, as somebody who works on pre-modern critical race theory, I avoid the oppressive framework of periodization and look instead for the evolution of concepts such as language, geography, and national or political or religious identity or kinship or monstrosity, and so forth. So I look at the ways these concepts are employed across texts to hierarchize categories of belonging, or to how to procure sovereignty and how to reproduce progeny. So there's an overlap as well as a diversion as these concepts encounter new anthropological data. And by extension, the diplomatic ploy of royal marriage is reconceived in light of shifting boundaries and new global system. Think, for example, in Merchant, how the Prince of Morocco is scorned as a potential suitor for Portia. Think of Caliban, who is portrayed as the absolute other, and any inkling of reproduction is only imagined through sexual violence. So I feel like that this issue of intermarriage is very much on people's minds, and especially Shakespeare's.
We would love to learn more about this topic. What are some of the resources that are your favorites, either books or websites, that you might recommend that we could use to go and explore this idea further?
Oh, yeah. So Fran Dolan's Marriage and Violence, the Early Modern Legacy, was very much formative of thinking about matrimony in the period. Kim Hall's Things of Darkness, while it does not address marriage directly, has really shaped my thinking specifically in theorizing foreign queens. And in terms of performance, Kevin Kern's Marriage, Performance, and the Politics at the Jacobean Court also helped me very much in thinking about performing royal marriage in this period.
Thank you so much for providing those. We will link to all of these resources in today's show notes, so make sure you check out those to find out more. Now, Mira, we ask everyone this next question here at That Shakespeare Life, and that's, what's the one book you would take with you on a deserted island? My friends in England tell me I'm supposed to allow you the complete works of Shakespeare and a copy of the Bible, so this choice would be in addition to those.
I have read in the past year Ross Gay's Book of Delight. Ross Gay is a very accomplished poet. And in this Book of Delight, he writes every single day a vignette on something that occurred during the day that brought him joy. And it's a very, very simple book, but it has anchored me in ideas about compassion, about joy, about giving that I have not thought of. And I think if I'm alone on a desert island, I would love the solace of Ross Gay.
That sounds like an excellent choice, and you would be quite happy on your deserted island, I think. What a good selection. So what's next for you? What are you working on now that you're excited about?
Oh, I am working on queens and lots of queens. My book is on royal marriage, foreign queens, and constructions of race in the early modern period. I'm also working on a special issue of Feminist and Scholar Online, which is a publication out of Barnard. And in this publication, in this special issue, we're going to have a historicist and presentist approach to the idea of queenship. We'll talk about pre-modern notions of queenship and also issues of queenships from Beyonce to Nicki Minaj.
What a fascinating book. We'll definitely look forward to seeing more about that. Thank you so much for being here and for talking with us about marriage and its portrayal on stage during Shakespeare's lifetime. This has been delightful.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Cassidy. Thank you very much for having me.
If you enjoyed this topic and want to learn more, come talk with us over on the website. You will find packed into the show notes for this week extra history, where you can learn more about James I's marriage plans for Charles, as well as the relationship between England and Spain, and how intermarriage fueled politics for this point in time. I always pack extra history into the show notes so you can learn more. And there are links to the great resources Mira mentions today over there as well. Explore further and talk with us about this topic, all at cassidycash.com/episode 89. That's cassidycash.com/EP89. When I first started studying Shakespeare, especially as an American, where the English language is very different on this side of the pond than where Shakespeare was writing, I often mispronounced some of the words that you find in the plays. Like originally I said Gloucester instead of Gloucester. Well, that's why I downloaded Audio Shakespeare Pronunciation app. It's an easy-to-use, straightforward app that you can download to your phone or tablet on iTunes as well as Google Play. And it lets you search any word from Shakespeare, and then it tells you exactly how to say it with a playable audio guide built right in. Audio Shakespeare Pronunciation app is like having a professional voice coach that you can carry in your pocket. Explore all the features of this app and download it right now at cassidycash.com/Shakespeare app. That's cassidycash.com/Shakespeare app. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. I'm Cassidy Cash, and I hope you learned something new about the Bard. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to That Shakespeare Life. As always, the best conversations happen after the episode over at CassidyCash.com. Become a part of a vibrant Shakespeare conversation by adding your voice over at the website. Until next time, remember, when you want to know William Shakespeare, you have to go behind the curtain and into That Shakespeare Life.